The Wizard's Lab, serving web pages from AL. Hey, I'm Eric, and it's pitch black here in British Columbia in Canada, and it's raining, so this is the perfect opportunity to do a bit of skunk work, a bit of hacking. And my choice of hacking lately has been building a web server. This is actually not something that's really new in the world of Business Central. There has been numerous solutions. I think I wrote the first one I know of. I wrote back in the early 2000s. Ways to create tools to help people build portal solutions. If you need to have customer log in and do something, then you need some sort of portal technology in order to serve up data and serve up business logic and make everything kind of be linked together. The go-to solution today is probably to get all the data you need out of OData and the business logic you need to trigger from bound unbound actions. But there are other ways, and the challenge with OData today is that if you have, the front page of a portal and it might need to get data from 7, 8, 10 different OData calls, that's a lot of traffic. You might get throttled by Business Central. OData is not the fastest in the world, and when you suddenly have multiple calls and stuff like that. So there are other options. The way I have done it in the past, and my go-to technology in this world is server-side templating. I think is the most proper way of saying it. So some sort of a hybrid page that on the server side resolves to a standard HTML, whatever version HTML that is, page. Technology is like that. PHP is kind of working like that. With .NET now, what Microsoft is pushing are Razor, which is pretty cool, where what you have is a page that is a hybrid between HTML and something other than HTML. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here is the homepage for my company, eFocus, and what we have is a product called WSFN, which is I think at one point in time it stood for Web Server for Navision, but then a Web Server for Nav, and now, well, this is still an in. And it's kind of a tag language that you do. Let's see if we can. This page will be. There's a bunch of tags that will do a lot of stuff, and you can write. Let's see if there's something funky. So we open a table, and then if field 101 in that table is different from 0, then show this field, else show focus finance as a text, and if close that table, else to the top auth, which is kind of an if. So there's a whole tag language, which is quite powerful, and that's all evaluated in Business Central. But also, those table number, fields number, that's really setting us back decades in some cases. Anyway, let me show you here. No, not there. Sorry, let me show you here. So here's a web page, and we can see that. Let me just reload this just to prove that this is kind of a web page. We can see that there's clearly a customer name and then some customer ledger entries, I think. And if we click on a customer, we get to a new page So there's kind of a RESTful approach to the URL, and that works quite well. So let me show you how I made this, and let me up front, because as the title kind of indicated, this is probably in the weird department. So this is built using my AL compiler. Anyway, so what we're talking to here is a .NET based web server, and here is, I think, exactly, not 199, under 200 lines of C#. And basically what we have here is a ASP.NET Core web server, and what it does is that it kind of collects, let's do the simple one, so you're just getting the root page, so we'll call a function called getBC, and getBC will grab all the parameters of the path. It will grab all the query string parameters, and it will grab some other information, content types, and all that good stuff. And it will build a JSON structure for that. So JO is just a JSON object. It's really not inventful variable naming here. And at some point, we're calling a web service. The web service we're calling is defined in our app settings. So here's we can see there's a code unit exposed. And forget about the at some point I thought this should be named BWA, and I think I have actually forgot if this was BC script web application or something like that. Anyway, so we take the JSON and we call a function called call, why not, and has a parameter called P, and we just pass all the JSON into that. If not error happened, then we take, through a base 4 conversion, we take the result and we send that back out to the web server or to the web client. So what we have here is it's a middleware solution. It's a proxy that takes calls from a web browser and routes it into Business Central. So let's walk into Business Central and take a look. And I think I'll actually start here. So here's a table called Web Templates. And a web template is, so what we're going to see is this page. And we can see that this one is marked default. So we called, I think, we called with customers, and we actually called directly to this page. But since this is default, that will be the page that will be used if nothing else was specified. So let's take a look at how that template looks. And now you can see that now we're sort of getting into stuff that is related to my compiler. You can recognize the very strange layouts. If you haven't seen any of the videos on the compiler, I would suggest keep watching this one and check the other ones. I will put some links down below, hopefully, otherwise remind me in the comments. There's a video on how the compiler works, how I built it. Then there's 2 videos on where I use it for 2 different apps. I support a Stream Tool and the one field report. Anyway, what we see here is clearly not AL. Oh wait. So we can see here that there's a kind of so the question mark tag you recognize from other languages. It's kind of saying, okay, what's in this tag is not what's outside. And we can see that it says BC, meaning that what's in this tag is actually AL code. So at this point on the page, on this web page, we're declaring two variables, customer record and a customer ledger entry record. Then we can see that this continues with all sorts of normal. I just grabbed some random, well, not entirely random, but I grabbed a template from a framework called Material Design Lite, kind of to prove that in this way of doing things, there's no predefined design or stuff like that you have to follow. It's all up to you. So there's lots of stuff going on. The first thing, that if you're really sharp, you can see that there's kind of a funky style sheet here, /styles. So let's remember that one, and I'll get back to that one in a bit. So anyway, HTML continues, and stuff like that. But now we meet another $BC tag, and then it says, if cost.findset, then begin, repeat, and then the tag stops. So we have like this is not even a true snippet, this is just a fraction of a piece of AL code. But we all know that if there's a repeat, you gotta have an until. So we can look down and see that down here, and I'm sorry about the indentation, I should have really cleaned this up, but I didn't. So you can see here's an until cost.next equals 0, and then there's an end, meaning that if we look at all this, which is HTML code, that's inside our repeat loop, meaning that we're repeating HTML. Let's continue for a second here. So we can see that inside this, there's a new variant here. So you can see that, I think we see it first here. Actually, we're building a link, an href, and there's the question mark again. But this time, it does not start with BC. It just says cost.number, meaning that now we're just showing a value. Because if we look at the page here, and if I'm clicking, we can see that the link says /customer /10,000. So /customer /10,000. And again, we can also see that we use the cost.name directly here in the actual link. So the text here, that's the name. So this is number, this is name. Then we continue, and we can see that there's a new one of the $BC. And somebody at this point probably, but Eric, what if you have a variable that starts with BC? Too bad at this point. That's why this is pitch black and it's raining, and there's all sort of disclaimers on this thing. Don't start your variables with BC. That's a bad thing. I'll find a solution to that at some point. Anyway, so now we're back in AL code, and we're doing a set filter on the ledgers, and we're checking if we can find some customer ledger entries. We do a new repeat, and then we do a calc fields on the amount. And now we're back in HTML, but we're also adding, posting date from the ledger, description from the ledger, and the amount from the ledger. Then now we're back in AL, doing the until. So this until is matching this repeat. So for each customer ledger entry, we're actually adding a TR, so a table row in HTML, then until, then end, and that fixes the begin. So one slight, and this goes for Razor also in .NET, is that we cannot really support this thing, because as soon as we start thinking about adding HTML between the lines, the one statement after then becomes meaningless, unless you're in a true something else. So it might work, it might not work, but at this point I'm putting begin and ends all thing. Then the templates continue, and that's it. So let me repeat. We have a page. The page open. The customer table runs through all customers. For each customer is grabbing the customer ledger entries for that customer and output all that. And at this point, I don't blame you if you say this is a unholy marriage between two technologies that should never be shared in the same file. And I will not necessarily argue with you, because I kind of feel the same. But on the other hand, what we're doing here in just a few lines of interspecies syntax mingling, it's quite powerful. Okay, so let's talk about, and this works, you can see that. I think I actually can run it in the other side here, and we get the same thing. So that's the other side is just kind of a test for this to work. Okay, so then the next question, which is a fair question to ask again, is, but hang on, Eric, what is this actually getting translated into? Let me show you. So I can ask to download, it says download compile, but totally ignore that one. And ignore that this is still looking weird here. But you can see here's, now it's a snippet of something that's close to AL. There's a little thing at the end. It's close to AL, but oh, this is AL, but not inside a true object. So now this one starts with a command called HTML that has a string of a bunch of HTML code. Then it says if cost finds it, repeat. Then we got more statements, a statement HTML, and then HTML with the customer.number, and then some end and the customer.name, and we are ending the A and ending the P, starting the table. Now we're calling the code in the middle, and then outputting different things. So now we're just outputting raw HTML, then we're outputting code, then outputting raw XML, outputting code, raw XML, outputting code, raw XML, code, raw XML, HTML, did I say XML? Raw HTML, wow. Code. So you see that there's suddenly a kind of AB, TikTok thing here. And this code placed in to the proper context will output a valid HTML and will output the exact HTML that we're seeing here, which is what the web server is getting. So let me show you how that actually comes to play. Let me go into web service. So remember we had a web service called we called a procedure called call, had a parameter called p. That was over here somewhere. Here. And right now, by the way, this web service thing I'm using here is my own little thing. So this is right now it's actually using SOAP, but we can also do the OData thing with it. But I kind of like SOAP actually. I know I'm not supposed to say that out loud, but I do. Anyway, this is the function that we call. So in here, p is a string with the JSON, all the parameters, and we're expecting to get some text back to send out to the web server or to the web client. And at some point, there's some other things going on. There's lots of stuff going on here, but let's focus on the simpler. So we're getting a web template, and at some point, lots of stuff happens. We get into a execute web here, and this is where we take the HTML, which is the template. So we get the template. So the raw. Let me see. So we get this, and then at this point I just use split. Perhaps you've seen the video on split. So we use split to parse data. At this point, I'm just using split to parse data. This could be way more sophisticated, and it will be at some point. But for now, it works. And the great thing about this is that kind of ends up with the exact code. HTML, code XML, code XML, code XML. And if code is even, then we're in code. So if it starts with BC right now, so again, very simple. We will append this as code. If it's just HTML, we will append it and put the call for HTML around it. If this is the very first thing after the the way it is that it says that the first section is a pre-section. So up here we could also do and say we want to create a procedure and do stuff up here. So we can define stuff in the first section, and then after the first section it will insert a begin. And then it builds up the page, it builds up the source code we just saw. This thing, and it at some point it adds the end to it here. Now we have a piece of code. Then I call the compiler to parse the code. Then I call it says evaluator, but it calls the interpreter to run this code, and we get whatever HTML is getting generated. So what is web.html and web.resell? Let me actually show that one, because that one is slightly interesting also. So here is a web called web function, a code unit called web function. Web functions is actually a subscriber, and my compiler now has a event called onFunctionCall. So if you suddenly call a function like HTML that is not part of the normal the more normal functions that's in AL, we'll call this event to see if somebody has subscribed to this and actually expose that. So we could actually go and search for that for a second, just to look how that works. So you see here is a long case statement saying arrow, string lane, round, abs, power, clear, calculate, randomize, random, bunch of functions. But at the end of that one, we're saying, well, let's try to see if somebody is giving us that function that we did not have. And in this case, I'm adding a bunch of functions, but I'm also adding the HTML function, and the HTML function will have a built-in text builder where everything is built. So at some point we call the get HTML, and the builder is returning the string. And we exit that out of execute web. So where was that? And then we build a JSON structure called response, convert that to base 64 and send it back out to .NET. And .NET says, thank you for that, the result string, and we get the HTML out of the JSON and send that back to the web client. That was a long explanation. I'm sorry about that. This is kind of anyway. So that's the round trip, and right now it's compiling every bit. So we can try to say, okay, if we run this, it's a no. Now we're also recording videos of this, the same machine, so a second and a half. But maybe you don't want a stupid AL compiler built by a guy in a basement to run your high performance website, even though this is still pretty good. So what we can do, let me close this guy. So you can see here that we have different types of templates. And remember I said that we have there were a link to a style sheet that was called styles, which in that case is actually just a CSS style. So we could potentially also create style sheets with AL code in it. So we could do fancy styles, dynamic styles based on how AL looks or what happens with your data. Anyway, but check this guy out. So this one is type hardened. And what does that mean? That means that there is no template here. Instead, there is, and let me actually, I should have opened that before we started the video. So let's see if we go in here. Yeah. No, I don't care about that one. So here's another extension. And this extension is simple. There is basically a single code unit that is subscribing to an event called onCall hardened template, meaning that this one will now say that, hey, I have a template called hardened, and the code I have here, see, this is kind of almost the same as what we just went through in detail. Is that the only difference is that there's a prefix on the HTML call, but other than that, it's just the code that we had that was generated, that instead of being compiled, generated, and compiled and all that stuff, we just saved the compile output in a code unit and told this one, hey, now we're just a regular code unit, we're deploying that through normal means, so we can call the hardened versions of this that skips the compiler, and depending on circumstances, it's somewhere between twice as fast, or at least a third faster, depending on my machine is recording at the same time, so its performance is terrible on this one. But the cool thing about this URL, so let's do it out here also. So that, this is the same page as this guy. There is no difference unless I at some point made a difference. Switching between them, there is no difference. It's the same page. This page is served by my funky AL compiler. This page is served by regular AL code compiled with Microsoft's tools, and we eventually cross-compiled to C# and IL and machine language. So this is high performance as you can come in many cases, and it's just AL code. So here would be the great pitch saying, hey, boom, this is ready to go for doing a lot of stuff. This is nowhere near ready to anything, but I find it interesting. But I also am still not really clear about the unholy marriage between two languages. If this is a trend that should be stopped now, and we should never do this anywhere else. Perhaps you noticed that I have proper syntax highlighting of HTML, but I also have syntax highlighting of AL. So I spend way too much time on actually building a syntax highlighter that would know about the question mark tag and switch highlight engine. So this one is actually highlighting correctly, figuring out that now we're in HTML, so one highlighting scheme, and then we're going into AL, and then it's a different highlighting scheme, different keywords and all that good stuff. I think that's pretty cool. But what do you guys think? I want to let me know in comments below. Am I a mad man and this should be deleted off every single backup I have and nuke the GitHub repository, or is this interesting? I actually think that the hardened version is gonna perform better than most other solutions you can come up with, providing the same amount of information, real-time data out of BC. You can always do caching to somewhere else, but that doesn't count. Real-time data out of BC with multiple dependent queries. I think this is probably some of the fastest way you can do this, but prove me wrong. And I would love to see. If you have a great idea, I'll gladly feature that in a video. Anyway, I think this is probably a good place to stop. Let me know in the comments below if there's some of the finer details in that you would love to see, and I will gladly do a follow-up with this. But until then, this is still pitch black night here, and I think I'm overdue for some ice cream. So you guys enjoy the day. I'll see you soon. Stay safe and do a bit of hacking once in a while. Bye.